So, in light of the recent trailer for Ahsoka Season 2, I noticed that one character no one is talking about is Shin Hati, and I think one of the main reasons is that we just don't know where her story is headed. She is one of the 4 Force users who is stranded on Peridea, but she's the only one who doesn't seem to have an explicit purpose. Baylan is on his mission to find what could be the font of power, or the pool of knowledge. He is seeking the beginning. Ahsoka and Sabine are trying to stop him. They learn from Anakin's Force ghost that Baylan is searching for a power that could end all wars, so they know how dangerous the mission is. So they're trying to stop Baylan and find their way home. But with Shin, we know surprisingly little, but the recent teaser trailer did give us something of a clue. Let me explain. I want to begin with a quick bit of visual poetry which I think a lot of people missed. We know Dave Filoni can't help himself, he takes after George Lucas, and while this trailer did have a lot of callbacks to previous Star Wars projects, I've not seen anyone mention the Shin Hati one. At the end, when she fights Huyang, who's evoking General Grievous, she strikes a similar pose to Anakin Skywalker from Revenge of the Sith. When Anakin is fighting Obi-Wan, George Lucas had Anakin cover his mouth to evoke the famous Alexandre Cabanel painting, The Fallen Angel, which depicts the devil after his fall from heaven. Just something very interesting that I noticed. But now let's talk about her story arc. So as we know, at the end of Season 1, Shin was abandoned by her master. For one reason or another, she just didn't fit into his new plans. Baylan said to her that her ambition leads her in one direction, and if you remember, he left her with one final parting lesson. Impatience for victory will guarantee defeat. A very Dave Filoni-esque kind of lesson, the Confucius-style quote that you would see at the start of Clone Wars episodes. But it's a lesson which I think Shin has been reflecting upon, because Baylan also told her to take her place in the upcoming Empire, to keep working for Grand Admiral Thrawn, while Baylan moves on. And now that Thrawn has left Peridea, I think Baylan assumed that Shin went with him. The former Padawan who has been trained for so much more than just a Boken Jedi catches up to him. They face each other again after what's probably been a few weeks or even months. But how is this confrontation, this meeting gonna go down? Because notice that when Shin calls out to him, she still addresses him as Master, and given the fact she's wearing warmer clothing and finds him in the snow, I think she's been following him for some time. And this is where my theory comes in. Even though Shin has found a temporary home with the bandits, I think there has to be a reason that she's chasing after Baylan. It could be abandonment syndrome and she wants to find purpose again, but I think it's more than just the fact she's feeling a bit lost. I think a theory from the first season still holds true. The entity or power that Baylan sensed in the first season is now calling to Shin. When they first arrived on Peridea, and Baylan had the epiphany that the fairy tales from the Jedi Temple of Dreams and Madness were real, I think the entity calling to him wanted both of them. He sensed it most strongly when he was with Shin in episode 7, and if you go back to rewatch the first season, you notice a moment where Baylan is testing Shin. He asks her if she can feel it, and she says no. And maybe in Baylan's mind, that was the moment that he realized they were on 2 separate paths. But what if this entity was also trying to lure Shin, and just assumed that Baylan would take her with him? And here's another twist. What if this source of power doesn't actually want Baylan? It just used him because of his abilities, his Force cognition, his superstitions and knowledge about the ancient witch kingdom, but in truth he was just a means to an end, to deliver Shin to whatever this font of power really is. So now that Baylan is well and truly on his way, and you'll notice he seems to be struggling a bit, it's possible the power noticed Shin's absence and contacted her itself. Maybe this is what she's trying to tell Baylan, that she was contacted by the presence that called out to him. The only problem is, either Baylan doesn't believe her, or simply doesn't want her on this quest. And this goes back to a crucial theme that was present in Baylan's first fight with Ahsoka. Baylan wants to feel special, and there's a very good reason for it. And now that he's being called out to by this mysterious energy, he's starting to feel like a chosen one in his own right. And I'm using the term chosen one deliberately, because I think there is some jealousy from Baylan about the kind of Jedi that Anakin once was. And you might be thinking, hang on a minute, what has Anakin got to do with it?
Everything!
Based on dialogue from Season 1 Episode 4, Dave Filoni has deliberately been connecting the 2 characters. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. The most pivotal turning point in Baylan's life was Order 66. He lost faith in every tenet and principle of the old religion he once believed in. But there's an interesting catch. I think Baylan has a unique take on the Great Jedi Purge, and it all has to do with Anakin. I think for Baylan, he sees beyond Palpatine's manipulations, he sees beyond Yoda's hubris, and instead blames the overall decline in standards within the Jedi ranks. In a way, I think Baylan is very Dooku-like. There's a good chance he knew Qui-Gon Jinn and saw firsthand how a slave boy from Tatooine was perceived as the prophesied chosen one, even if the likes of Mace Windu, Yoda, and Ki-Adi-Mundi didn't agree at first. I think there's almost a jealousy about the way Anakin was treated, and later by the end of the Clone Wars, was revered throughout the Republic. But maybe Baylan was more perceptive when it came to Anakin. Maybe he's someone who raised a few red flags and was one of the first to notice Anakin's dark side tendencies. And maybe Baylan tried to warn other Jedi Masters. Maybe just like Mace Windu, Baylan became skeptical of Palpatine's relationship with Anakin. And so when it was too late and Anakin had turned to the dark side, somehow Baylan found out, but maybe wasn't too surprised, and as a result, lost faith in the Jedi. It was a long time coming. After warnings from Count Dooku, Yaddle, Sifo Dyas, it's also worth considering that Baylan might have known Anakin personally. I've got a strong feeling this is something Season 2 is going to deal with. And I've had my suspicions ever since one of Baylan's lines to Ahsoka in Season 1. Everyone in the Order knew Anakin, but few would live to see what he became, which heavily implies that Baylan knows Anakin turned to the dark side, and maybe some of his information comes from Grand Admiral Thrawn. But like I say, based on some of the dialogue and the rumors that Anakin's ghost is going to fight Baylan, I think there's more of a connection between these two characters than we know. He might have been good friends with Anakin, but I've always sensed jealousy, especially because Anakin had the kind of destiny, power, and importance that Baylan never achieved. It's almost like there was a mixture of admiration and resentment at the same time. Anakin got to become one of the most powerful Jedi and Sith. And I think a part of this is also the fact that in his own way, alongside Palpatine, Vader reshaped the galaxy. So Baylan has witnessed the cycle of Republic, Empire, and now the New Republic. So he's seen this full cycle. He knows his Jedi and Sith history, and he knows that this cycle repeats itself again and again and again. And now he thinks he's found a power that can break him free of all of that. But the consequences are wide-ranging and could be disastrous. But in his own way, he's made himself his own chosen one. So returning back to Shin, that's why he probably doesn't want her on this quest. Baylan might think of himself as the savior of the universe, the real chosen one, the one to bring about real peace and end all wars. But what else is he trying to end? And this is where my brain starts moving away from the font of power or the pool of knowledge, and instead a revisiting of the world between worlds. It was present in Star Wars Rebels, in Ahsoka Season 1, and Baylan might be trying to achieve what Palpatine tried to do. And the whole Chosen One motif is so pertinent because Baylan is fascinated by prophecy and Force superstitions. Now that he knows Peridea is real, he might also believe in a reworking of the prophecy of the Chosen One. There is a lot of deep mythology that Season 2 is about to address. And now, Anakin's ghost can appear to Baylan, but he doesn't want anyone standing in his way. And speaking of Shin, the trailer shows us an interesting moment where the bandits are watching on as she tries to take on Huyang. My guess is that she's trying to raid the T6 while Ahsoka and Sabine are away. I don't specifically think this is a moment where she's trying to kill the Jedi. I reckon she's more interested in regaining a master's trust. Maybe the bandits don't have much to offer her. I think there's a good chance that by the end of the season she's going to accept Ahsoka's offer and join the good guys. I even saw an interesting theory that said, imagine if Shin becomes a Jedi and Sabine turns to the dark side. Now that would be a twist. But if Shin does join Ahsoka, it's not going to come straight away, and it might be after a long and wretched journey after being manipulated by the powers that be. But what do you guys think? And what do you think's in store for Shin? But if you enjoyed this one, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and may the Force be with you always.